Hello everyone, my name's George Farmer and this is a question and answer session that I set up on the Aquascaper page on Facebook. So I invited people, hobbyists, to ask any questions they like about planted tanks or aquascaping on the Aquascaper Facebook page. I've made a list of the questions and I'll do my best to answer them for you right now. So Gareth Rogers asks, hi George, I am now stocking my planted tank with fish. It's an ADA 60H. What fish would you recommend, and also a rough amount? Hi Gareth, thanks for your question. First of all, I just have a little think about the style of aquascape that you've got. Being a very tall aquarium, relatively tall, 45 centimetres by 60 long, I would definitely go for a more of a tall bodied fish. I quite like subtle colours myself, so something like black widow tetras might be suitable, maybe pretty tetras, beacon tetras. There's so many tetras out there. So if you wanted more of a high impact colour like a red, you could probably go for like serpent tetras, red phantom tetras. If you wanted to go for a different species, you could maybe go for a shoal of barbs. So I've got some juvenile golden barbs in here. They're fairly chunky, they're not as slim as, you know, like some of those borers. Yeah, any of those really. It all depends on your personal taste. If it's a simple aquascape, I definitely only stick to one large shoal of the same species as well, just to keep it high impact and really natural looking. Okay, Bobby Kiyupi, apologise if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. I want to rescape my tank soon and I want to reuse my Amazonia. Is there a specific procedure, or do I just take it all out, maybe wash it a little bit and put it back? Thank you. Personally, if I want to reuse it, I would leave it in there. I would take all the hardscape out, obviously take all your livestock out. If you're reusing the livestock, keep them in a safe quarantine tank, or at least a large bucket with a filter and heater running. And then I would siphon all the water out and then pay a particular attention to the surface of the aqua soil. So what you can do, you can gently wave your hand above the soil, you could even disturb it slightly, and then just siphon off all that lifted up detritus and waste organic matter. I wouldn't take it all out, wash it and put it back again. It will more likely turn to sludge depending on how old it is. I would probably just leave it be and then maybe just siphon off the top layer. I hope that answers your question. Zach, this is a really complicated question, really technical. Well, I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. George, first of all, thanks for your awesome effort to share your knowledge with fellow hobbyists. Oh, you're welcome, Zach. It's absolutely my pleasure. Okay, my question is, can you explain the relationship between fish keeping, planted tank, and TDS, total dissolved solids, and redox potential? Are these connected, and if so, what extent should we pay attention to the values? Thanks in advance. Well, to keep it really, really simple, personally, I don't worry about it at all. For those that don't know what totally dissolved solids are, it's basically the amount of solids that are totally dissolved in the water. So the harder your water generally, the more TDS you'll have. The softer the water, the lower TDS. A lot of fish come from very, very low TDS environments in nature, but a lot of the fish that we have in the hobby are captive bred in harder water. So from that perspective, you don't need to worry. Plants themselves aren't fussy about TDS. There's a couple of species that do prefer softer water, but if you've got good CO2, good light, good circulation, good nutrients, then you can pretty much grow any plant in any TDS, with a couple of exceptions, I'd say. Redox potential is a little bit more complicated. It's to do with the reduction in oxygen potential in the water, and it's largely a measurement of how much almost like how much organic waste and bacteria are in the water or in the filtration system and consuming oxygen. So broadly speaking, the lower the number the better. Higher the number has been linked to more algae growth, but then there are reports of higher redox potential levels minimising algae. So to cut a long story short, I wouldn't worry about it at all. It's very, very rarely talked about in the aquascaping and planted aquarium hobby, and the reason for that is, you know, people aren't worried about it because they don't need to be. So I hope that answers your question. As I say, I have successful planted tanks. I'm running 4 at the moment at home, and actually I've never tested any of them for anything. I just rely on large water changes, healthy plants, healthy fish, good filtration system, etc. Daniel Fung, types of algae, causes and solutions. That is probably a whole video on its own. That is a massive topic. So yes, I'm not going to go into too much detail. What I will say is, and I've touched upon it in a previous Facebook post on the Aquascaper page, is that prevention is definitely better than cure. If you set up your tank, follow good maintenance practices for sure. Do large weekly water changes. Don't stock too heavily with fish. Make sure you've got good CO2 levels if you're using CO2, good circulation, not too much light. And then if you want to treat algae, a lot of people tend to overdose liquid carbon products or spot dose them, so just do a Google search for that. Most algae are caused by the same thing, which is lack of maintenance, too much light, an imbalance with CO2 and other nutrients, overstocking with fish. There's so many factors at play. I could go on it for hours. So I hope that kind of answers your question. There's lots of articles out there on algae treatment, so do have a look. Puta Wira Santana, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, explain how balancing your aquascape light, CO2, filter, temperature first in a simple, easy way for beginners. Okay, I always start off with quite low levels of lighting, so I only have enough light to grow the most demanding plant in there, and that discourages algae growth. Excess light will definitely encourage algae. CO2, you want to be aiming for a stable CO2 level of around about 20 to 30 parts per million. You can test that using a drop checker, a 4 degrees KH drop checker. A simple Google search will throw loads of answers up for you for that. Filtration, I like to use bigger filters than necessary, not only in terms of just keeping the water clean, chemically and biologically and physically, mechanically, but also to provide good levels of circulation. So for instance, this aquarium has a Fluval G6 filter, which is rated for a 600 litre aquarium, and this is only about 100 litres. I have it on full flow, and yes, you can see the water's crystal clear, and yeah, definitely go for a bigger filter than you need. Temperature, I would go for lower temperatures on the lower end of the scale for the fish, so 23, 24 usually for most of my tropical species. And fertilisers, I always dose every day. Dose a little bit too much, the plants will happily use any excess before algae can, and a healthy plant is more likely to fight off algae. So it's not really about balancing the elements, it's just about having not too much light, loads of good circulation, good CO2, good nutrients, good water changes, and the balance kind of thing isn't really an issue. It will promote good plant growth, and eventually a mature aquascape will have such a healthy plant biomass, then algae won't stand a chance, hopefully. I hope that kind of explains it in an easy way for beginners. Chris Watts says, "Hi George, during your aquascapes you explain about the tank and the all-important lighting, but not so much about the filtration used. Can you expand further on this, and what filtration you use in order to keep the viewing attention on the aquascape itself and not the equipment?" That's a great question. I've just kind of touched upon that. So I always use a bigger filter than necessary. At home I'm currently using a Fluval G6 in here, and then on my Aquascaper 300 cube I'm using the smallest Eheim thermo filter. It keeps the heater out of the tank, which is great. And I always use clear hose and glassware if I can. That obviously minimises the distraction in the aquascape. And then in my Aquascaper 1200 I use two JBL 1501E green lines, again with clear hose and glassware, and an inline diffuser and an inline heater, and that keeps as much equipment out of the tank as possible. Okay, Adam Beth Whitson, how do you choose and know the right place to put plants when planting, especially for beginners? That's a really good question. Most plants, when you buy them, should have a label, and it tells you whereabouts in the tank it should go, and it also should tell you kind of the maximum height it will reach, maybe even the width. That's a bit of an arbitrary figure because different growing conditions encourage different height growths, etc. But that's a good place to start. There's some really good websites out there from different plant suppliers that tell you how, kind of where to put the tank, foreground, midground or background. There's examples of the plants being used in aquascapes, so you can get an idea from that. But you can split your plants into three basic categories, like foreground, midground, background. Obviously the tallest at the back, flat background, and then the shortest at the front. So yeah, just do a little bit of research. There's plenty of information out there, plenty of plant databases. I'll just give a quick plug to the UK Aquatic Plant Society, ucaps.org. They have a plant database on there, and it gives you loads of information on each different plant species. Okay, really apologise for the next question. It's been written in a different alphabet type, so I apologise I can't read it. But the question is, tell me how to do steep slope without having a landslide later in future. That's a good question. Actually, if you've got lots of plants in there, that should prevent the landslide. And if you're using hardscape, deliberately bury the hardscape slightly in the soil as well, and that will prevent it from coming forward. If you can't do any of those things, then you can actually just put sort of thin plastic dividers, cut up ice cream cartons, etc., just slot them into the soil, and that should stop the soil from coming forward. Alberto Cecchiuto, again apologies for the name pronunciation. Which methods have you used to remove hair algae from your aquarium so far? Well, thankfully I tend not to get too much algae these days. I always have a really good population of shrimp, amino shrimp or cherry shrimp or both. Occasionally if I do get nasty hair algae, I might spot dose it with liquid carbon. So I'll drain the tank during a big water change, and then I can literally get a paintbrush and a cap full of liquid carbon. I'll paint the hair algae, and that'll just totally wipe out the hair algae, no problem. There are different fish that eat hair algae. Amino shrimp are very good. But like I said earlier, prevention is better than cure, so if you can keep a healthy plant tank system, then hopefully you won't run into any hair algae. Okay, long question from Andre Kaisvetter. Hi George, great idea. An expert help is always appreciated from aquascapers like you. Oh, thank you. This is probably a departure from the usual Q&A, but I hope that one you can help on, especially since, I'll just cut to the chase. I have a high-tech Fluval Edge 2. He's modified it. He's got a 1000 litre per hour wave maker and an improved hang on the back filter. He's got CO2 with a glass diffuser, aqua soil with substrate additives, EI liquid ferts, and he's got the standard Fluval LED plus 2 extra LEDs, giving a total 24 watts plus the standard Fluval, so quite a lot of light. Most other plants in his Urigumi Scape thrive, and he lists all the plants, but he's having trouble with Hemianthus cuba and even Monte Carlo. And he's asking if you should upgrade the lights. That's a really common kind of assumption, that if you're struggling to grow plants, you should add more light. Actually, that's quite dangerous because you just basically encourage algae growth. If you're growing all of those other plants listed, so you're growing Lobelia cardinalis mini, you're growing Liliopsis, Tenula micro, Starogine repens, Eleocharis bellum, you know, they're all fairly moderate light demanding plants, no more demanding than HC or Monte Carlo. So it's not, I would say it's not a lighting issue, but more than likely a circulation and CO2 issue. So is your CO2 hitting the substrate? Those CO2 bubbles need to be actually ideally touching the carpeting plant. So you've got an in-tank glass diffuser, you can see the micro bubbles being generated, keep an eye on them, and are they actually getting circulated around the tank, hitting the bottom of the tank? If they're not, then that's probably your problem. Okay guys, I fired through those questions. I didn't want to make the video too long. If you do like this kind of video, please leave some feedback. Please do check out the Facebook Aquascaper page. That's facebook.com/evolution aquascaper, and you can I'll put this on YouTube as well, so you can leave comments in YouTube, any questions, and I'll pick out the best kind of questions that I think are suitable for the biggest audience, and I'll create another video soon. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe and keep on scaping. Cheers. Bye bye.